I'm Indra,
And I'm Amanda.
and we'd like to welcome you to The Messy Middle Matters. Hey, Amanda, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Indra?
I'm good. I'm good. Today is a topic that's near and dear to, I think, both of our hearts. Because, what's so interesting about the world these days is, especially the work world, there's this mandate almost to compartmentalize your life. And sometimes what that does, it doesn't allow you to acknowledge that you're human beings first and, and workers second. And so that's one of the challenges that I think I face in the workplace, and I face as an employee and also as a people manager. It's just really, it can be a really, really challenging thing um, to navigate. And shout out to my friend Jay, who suggested this topic for us for today. Yeah.
Yeah, same. Near and dear to our hearts. I mean, we both constantly acknowledge that we are human beings. What do you say? We are not automatons.
We are not
And
automatons. Yes.
yeah, we are not automatons. And it's especially difficult to navigate when there's just crap going on in someone's personal life.
Personal life. And sometimes we're going to talk about that when it's going down with one person, and then when it's going down for everyone all at the same time.
Yes.
It's a very, very, very different scenario. But finding how do you balance your life obligations and your work obligations and stay sane at the same time. I mean, I think that that's really an art form. That's really an art form and a hard thing for everyone to navigate. So should we start with personal, or should we start with the ones that are hitting all of us? Because I think that we have both topics to cover or subtopics.
Yeah, we could start with personal because I
Let's do
have
it.
one top of
Yeah.
mind. I mean, you know that the last few years for me have not been
Mhm.
the best
Mm-mm.
personally. One of the personal things that has happened was I lost my dad in 2019. And this was I think a week into starting a new job.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know anybody at the company. Like my manager barely knew my name. And I showed up for that first week, like excited, ready to go, setting up my laptop, meeting the team. And then the next week I had to be gone. And I reached out to my manager. I explained the situation. I was like, hey, it's also cool that I'm a transparent person. If you could just do me a favor and just let everybody know that this is what's happening. I didn't just ghost everyone after meeting them. He was just like, of course, like anything you need, take all the time. Like
Mhm.
he recognized me as a human being. And even that small thing of just don't even worry about work right now. Like just go handle your business. And just that little gesture is nice. It's just
Yeah.
a human thing to do. And a few weeks later, after, I got back to Denver, the head of the department, so my skip level, my
Mhm.
grand boss, was in town so he was in the New York office. He was in town in Denver for meetings and whatever.
Mhm.
And he stopped by my desk. I didn't have a relationship with this man. Like we just knew each other's names.
Mhm.
And he made it a point to stop by my desk, introduce himself, and offer his condolences.
Wow.
Yeah. And I will never forget him.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like that piece of humanity
Yeah.
just helped me through that difficult time at work.
Yeah. What is it? It's making me think of the quote. It's attributed to Maya Angelou, and I'm not going to get it exactly right. People won't remember the things that you said. They won't remember the things that you did. They won't remember how you made them feel. And you
Yeah.
will forever. I mean, it's the thing that he did, but it's how you felt about it that
Oh,
really,
totally.
yeah.
Totally. And, I think just the mere recognition that
Yeah.
yeah, work is work. Work is important, but it's not the most important thing. Like, how are you?
And that's not as common
No.
as we would like for it to be across all organizations and all companies. It's
It sounds so obvious, but it's not as, you're right, it's not as common as you would hope it is.
Yeah, like it's, I think I'm going to wind up bouncing back and forth, but it's making me think of the pandemic a little bit. Like, because there we
Mm-hmm.
saw this was happen. This collective experience was happening to everyone, not on your team, not in your company, not in your state, not in your country, the whole darn globe. It
Yep.
was happening to everyone all at once. And none of us were, even the most prepared person was not prepared for this, right?
No.
And you got to see how everyone reacted to this in mass and at scale. And, you got to see which are the companies that are more attuned to um, people's like understanding that people are humans and being so hyper focused on your bottom line or like, but we have a meeting today.
Right. But we have a meeting today and it's really important.
It's really important. Like, and I'll say I was at Verizon at the time, and you can look it up on my LinkedIn. It's not a state secret, right? And I will say, like, I was one of the last people who showed up in the office on that last day before New York City went in on lockdown, and to me, that was just a demonstration of what the company was like in response to that. Because if you think about Verizon was an extremely interesting place to be at the top of the pandemic because it was facing everything that everyone else was facing, and at the same time, the entire business model needed to totally tilt. I'm going to say tilt. I won't say business model, maybe it's too strong a word, but everything, the operations or what we were doing on a daily basis needed to shift to the way the world was shifting from, prioritizing, let's say, and I don't know exactly the priorities, that wasn't my role, but like you can imagine, I was just imagining like prioritization, making sure that, the cable running to the largest pieces of infrastructure in our nation, specifically I'm thinking of office buildings, was that traffic was prioritized, right? And that makes sense because things need to run and so on and so forth. But now it shifted to everyone's houses, which was totally distributed across everything, and focusing in on making sure that people in low access areas actually had access to wireless, or like I said, cable. Fios is a product of Verizon's, all these different things. And like trying to navigate all of this complexity at the same time was really, really challenging. And I will say that the company did a really great job, but there are companies out there that didn't do such a great job. Like I have friends and family that were in situations that were being forced to go into offices when no one was there because, and this was maybe not the absolute tippy top of the pandemic, but, as things went on, but before vaccines were available, they were forced to go into offices. For what reason? Not quite sure. It was really, it was reminding me of like in the dot-com era, it was like counting eyeballs was a metric of success for the early dot-com companies. Like, were you just counting eyeballs in the office just to prove the fact that you're using their real estate because that's a metric you decided you're going to hit? I don't know. Like, it was
Right.
really,
It's the button seat metric,
it was a
right? It's
button
like,
seat
yeah,
metric.
like who's at their desk?
It's just so, it was so like, what do you care about? Like this, they're sitting in front of a computer all day long, but half of your staff, it's okay for them to be at home, and half of your staff that does the exact same job has to go into the office. Like, I don't understand. And it's, yeah. Anyway, I've rambled a little bit, but that was
But
my
yeah, I mean, it's navigating the complexity specifically about the pandemic, right?
Mhm.
Like navigating the complexity that the entire world
Yeah.
had to navigate,
Yeah.
plus navigating the complexity of, working at Verizon of, oh, this is actually critical
Critical.
infrastructure. Yeah, critical
Critical.
infrastructure. And it's just like, well, you can't just be like, well, I'm not going to show up to work today.
No, but
But you also have to acknowledge that there is a whole world outside of the Verizon virtual office.
yes, 100%. And like I said, I think we struck the beautiful balance because if people didn't have connection, they couldn't Zoom their loved ones and make sure that they were okay and check on them, and hospitals wouldn't get the things that they need. Like there's a lot of stuff. Like but at the same time, as individual people, I think, like I said, like my sign up was stay safe, stay sane, and be gentle with yourselves. I think for every single Zoom call, whether it was like two people that were on the call, or if it was the entire team where it was like 500 plus, right? Like stay safe, stay sane.
Yeah. Do
Um,
you remember like the height of the pandemic where everyone was just like almost pretending like everything was fine at work?
but I think that was a collective denial. Like it was like
Yeah.
it was like a sure, this is normal, right? But and I think that I will say it, like right now in the world is going through a lot of different changes, like over the recent years. And I think that the one thing that made me feel okay during the pandemic, and I think is important for any leader, regardless of what challenges are going on, whether it's a hurricane or, something else that's going on, is to acknowledge that it's happening. When you acknowledge it, you name it, and it gives everyone, they're like, oh, okay, they know that this is hard. Okay, cool. We will not discuss it at all, but we will acknowledge that it's hard. At the very least, it's the bare minimum, right?
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. And I think the best case is where you create the right kinds of spaces for people to do a little bit more than that very just basic acknowledgement, right? And I don't know, that can take lots of different shapes and forms depending on the organization's scenario, depth of your relationship with that person.
Yeah. I was going to say a lot of it varies based on the context and the relationships that you have, right? Just going back to the personal challenges.
Mm-hmm.
There were coworkers who, as they got to know me, would would check in on me, just be
Mm-hmm.
like, "Hey, how are you doing?" Because
Yeah.
a lot of things aren't just a one-time event, right? And I think it's easy to kind of forget that because it's not top of mind.
Yep.
And as people got to know me, they would check in and be like, "How are you doing today?" And just the understanding that like not every day is gonna be a good day. I mean, regardless of what's going on in your personal life, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
even if everything is 100% like perfect, like you're living your best life, you could wake up one morning and just be like, "Today's not a good day."
Yeah, I think life's lifeiness and grief comes in waves and in unexpected things and whatever. I think that that's where one of the tools that I've seen it pre-pandemic, but it really took hold during the pandemic, like at the beginning of a meeting, just doing a round robin check-in to everyone, like thumbs up, thumbs to the side, thumbs down, right? Like that's a very basic, like, how are you today? So I know how to engage with you. Like I know I'm like, oh, today's not the day I'm going to push Amanda's buttons. She didn't sleep last night. Cool, cool. Like,
Right.
she slept fine last night, by the way, folks. But just as one of the basic examples that when I tell people, I'm like, hey, folks, I didn't sleep well last night. Like, just no button pushing today. Like, you can give me the challenges, but no button pushing.
Yeah, that actually just reminded me of I think this was when we worked together. Our
Mhm.
team meetings were like red, yellow, green. How are you feeling today? And instead of we made it a little fun, right? We were
Yeah.
we were like, what we pulled up the Pantone colors.
I love it. And I think making things a little bit lighter and a little bit not in a dismissive way. You want to
Right.
acknowledge the life's lifeiness. But bringing in a little bit of levity and making it, one of my favorite quotes is from Steel Magnolias. Laughter through tears is my favorite emotion, right? Bringing that kind of, like, yeah, I know it's really tough, but like, can we do just one little thing to just make it not hurt quite so much? And
Right, right,
Pantone colors can be the way to do it, or red, amber, green, or like, like whatever. Like, I'm feeling, what kind of animal am I today? I don't know.
right. And then just going back to the acknowledging that people are human.
Hmm. Very much so. Very much so. I don't think there's enough of that always. I mean, you don't want to over lean in on that because we're not, We're not, I don't care what anybody says, unless there's some sort of other, unless a true relationship has been forged outside of the workplace. We're not family. We're not trained therapists. We're not a lot of things, but we are human beings who are in community, whether we realize it or not, with our work colleagues. Like any time that more than, actually maybe more than one person gets together, right? It's a version of community. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So, we talked about just baseline,
yeah.
acknowledging that we're all humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, have you like do other examples come to mind of tactics that people can use to just tangible, actionable things that tools people can use to navigate these kinds of scenarios?
Yeah, I think you actually highlighted one of them at the beginning. I think it is about finding, if you are the person who's having a tough day, finding that one person that you can say to, hey, BT dubs, I'm having a tough day. And just so that they know, so that, if and you don't need to be, because sometimes you won't want to disclose what's going on, right? For one reason or another. I'd say, just find that one person you can trust so that they can be your eyes, ears, and be part of your, I'm
Like
going to
air
say
cover.
communication. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like what'll happen is like, it showed up from, this has showed up for me more when I've been a people manager, where somebody would say something like, and then, another team member would be venting, oh, such and such is just not doing, like, hey, they've got something going on. Like, oh, okay, I didn't know. I'm like, yeah. Like they're not being their typical selves because they've got something going on. I've got, and then it flips the conversation. Like, oh my gosh, how can I help? Like, no, I got it covered. They've got it covered. We're in communication. Just have a little patience. I think that to me is one of the, as a person, tell that one person that you trust so they can help to protect you and keep those raw parts of yourself, clear. I'd say, but the other piece which goes hand in hand is don't keep it to yourself. Like, don't keep it to yourself. Find that person because, giving it language always helps. But, if you keep it to yourself, no one will know. And then that can backfire you in some other sort of way, in ways that you couldn't have even imagined, right? Which could, in the worst case scenarios, lead to a severing of that relationship. And nobody needs that. So, find the right way to find that right person, even in the toughest organization. You can usually find that person. um, that would be my number one piece of advice as a person, as an employee of an organization or a member of a team.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I love the way you articulated that because as you were telling that story, I thought of all the times where I knew that someone, even not as a people manager, I just knew because of the
Mm-hmm.
relationships I had with people at work. I knew that someone was having a bad day or there was something going on in someone's life. And I've heard the chatter sometimes
Mm-hmm.
after a meeting of just like, what was this person thinking like when they said this, and it's just like, whoa, like just so you know, it's not
They're in the
typical,
muck.
like
Yeah.
yeah it's fine, like just let that roll.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine.
Yeah. And it's another one that came in and it left. But yeah, I think like that to me is number one. Do you have anything that comes to mind while I'm trying to remember what popped in and popped out?
um I think your second point was what I wanted to
Yeah.
was the advice that I
Mm,
would give to people, right? You don't have to be an open book. Like I just happen to be one of those people,
yeah.
right? Like I'm an open book. Whatever you want to know about my personal life, that's fine. I'll let you know all the details of of the crap that's going on in my life. But yeah, as a person who's going through
Hmm.
a hard time, whether that's personally or like pandemic related or whatever it is, right? Like a hurricane is coming your way,
Yeah.
and you need to just take the day off to prepare.
Yeah.
Um, I think just letting people know that so that you give them the permission to give you permission to take care of your stuff. Um, once once you acknowledge it, once you let someone know that this is what's happening.
And you led me right into the thing as I was writing. I'm like, oh, that's the thing I was thinking. I think that so now from the people manager perspective, model the behaviors you want to see. Right. And it's which for me is a lot more explicit than I would if I wasn't necessarily a people manager or a more senior member of the team. Right. But it's like, hey, I'll tell everyone, I'm like, hey, I'm going through this today. So that it gives permission, like it gives implicit permission. And then the other thing, which is the companion, if you are in any sort of leadership position, whether it's literally people manager or you're more senior or a more senior person in that room, give people permission to be humans. Explicitly say, hey, I know that the helicopter crashed in the Hudson. That's a recent event that, that was on the national news, right? Helicopter crashed in the Hudson and our workplace is 3 blocks away from there. I know you're all distracted. Do your best to try and stay focused. It's not impacting any of us. I've checked to make sure there's nobody knows the people that were involved in that, but I also acknowledge that this is a very human experience and it happened very close to us. So like I think that giving people that permission and giving them the knowledge to actually, or giving them the method or to be humans, I think is really important when you have a position of, I'm going to call it power, because it is power. But yeah.
Yeah. What came to mind for me was, as a people manager, if my dog needed to go to the vet, I'm just like, I gotta go. Like, she's not well. Like, I gotta go. And just modeling that behavior, right? Just, just dropping a note in the team Slack channel, like, hey, I'm gonna be offline for a few hours. Sorry. Like, can someone cover this meeting for me? I've got some things to take care of. And that gives people, just modeling that behavior, that makes it okay for people to do the same, right? If something comes up, if they need to pick up their sick kid from school, like if something just comes up, you give people, I keep on using the word permission, but it's like, you don't have to,
Permission.
it's permission, right? But
That's
you give people the
permission.
permission to be like, oh yeah, this thing in my life is more important than this meeting. Like, I've got to go, and like, I'm just going to tell you that I'm going to go. Like, I'm not going to ask you like, hey, you know, my kid needs to be picked up because of whatever. And like, can I go? Like, no, I'm just going to go. And like, I'm informing you.
I'm laughing because I'm thinking of a story. It was many, many, many moons ago. So over 15 years ago. And trigger warning. So for everybody. So 15 years ago, I wound up having cancer, kidney cancer. And after it was identified and before I was having surgery to have it removed, there was a litany of tests, which I won't go into, but I remember one day I just went into, or I emailed HR and I said, hey, I'm taking this date off. And they came back to me. They're like, usually the practice is that you actually ask for the day off. I said, I understand what the practice is usually, but I'm taking the day off. This is a day that they can schedule me. I think in every other scenario, I totally understand that. But right now, for this moment of time, I am taking the first things that I can get when I can get them. Right. And this is much earlier in my career, and I inherently understood the risks of breaking protocol and how that could be, that the backlash or the repercussions that could come from that. But, sometimes there are things that matter more. There are things that matter more than my paycheck. And I understand that comes from a tremendous place of privilege. Like, and I thank my lucky stars every single day um, for the advantages that I do have, and I don't take them for granted. So I know that this is not something that everybody can do, but everyone will have their scenario where it's like, I don't care what the rules are. There are things that matter more. I think that, actually, I forgot when we were talking about, when we were identifying this topic, I brought up one of my favorite core values from my time when I was at TD Ameritrade was people matter. And whenever somebody would say, hey, I can't come in because XYZ, I'm like, people matter, priorities. Well, see you tomorrow. No problem.
Yeah.
Right. But sometimes you just need to do that for yourself and say, hey, consequences be damned. My child matters more. My pet matters more. My spouse matters more. I matter more.
Right. I matter more. I'm
So
taking a mental health day today. I matter more.
I'm going to break. I recognize this. I will be a mess and I will go beyond whatever I can do. Like I will cause other people to be miserable. I understand this is zero notice and I understand there will be repercussions. I need to have a mental health day today.
Mm-hmm.
End a conversation. Reprimand me tomorrow.
Yeah. I think that core value of people matter sums up this advice, we'll call it, of this episode, right? People matter.
People matter. And I think that's a lovely place for us to end things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amanda, thank you so much, as always, for being my partner in all of this, in the messy middle as we navigate yet another topic. And I hope that everyone joins us next time when we explore something else. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.